Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes those complex stacks of sources, think scientific papers, health news, expert commentary, and really boils them down to what you need to know. And today, we're tackling something huge, a real breakthrough in an area that, let's be honest, hasn't seen enough innovation for far too long: menopausal health.
That's right. We're diving into the science behind a brand new FDA-approved treatment. It's non-hormonal, and it's aimed squarely at vasomotor symptoms, or VMS.
VMS, yeah, that's the clinical term for what millions experience as, well, intensely disruptive hot flashes and night sweats.
Exactly. Think about it, those flashes that just hit you out of nowhere, maybe during an important meeting or just trying to have dinner. They flood your body with heat. You have to stop everything.
And the night sweats, they're not just inconvenient, are they? They can absolutely wreck your sleep night after night. You start the day already exhausted.
And our sources really underscore this isn't a minor discomfort. For more than a third of women, these symptoms are severe enough to genuinely impact work, home life, just overall quality of life. And this can go on for a decade, sometimes even longer.
For years, the main answer has been hormone therapy. The gold standard, really.
It has been, and it's effective for many. But the reality is millions of women either can't take it, maybe due to a history of blood clots or certain cancers sensitive to estrogen.
Or they simply choose not to. They might be worried about side effects, things like bloating or breast tenderness, or just based on their own personal health assessment.
Right. So there's been this huge, gaping need for a really effective alternative, something powerful but non-hormonal.
And that's where this new drug, Elinzanetant, comes in. It received FDA approval on October 25th, 2025. And this approval wasn't out of the blue. It was built on a solid foundation of clinical trial data.
A massive amount of data, actually, from 3 key studies: OASIS 1, OASIS 2, and the longer-term OASIS 3 trial.
So our mission today on this deep dive is to really unpack that data stack. We want to get beyond the headlines.
We'll look at the science. How does this thing actually work on a biological level? We'll analyze the results. How fast does it bring relief, and how much relief?
And crucially, we need to dig into the safety profile, especially over the long term, looking at things like liver health, gynecological safety, all the things that led the FDA to say yes.
This really could be a game changer, a new chapter, you could say, in women's health.
Okay, let's start with the science then, because this is where things get really interesting and different from the old way of thinking. We always connect hot flashes with estrogen dropping off.
Right, that's trigger.
But this new understanding suggests it's not just about the hormones floating around. The actual command center for the hot flash is in the brain itself. Like estrogen decline flips a switch, but the wiring is central.
That's a perfect way to put it. We're moving from thinking about it purely as an endocrine, a hormone issue, to understanding the neurobiology behind it. And that wiring, that central point, is in the hypothalamus.
The brain's thermostat, essentially.
Exactly. There's a specific group of nerve cells there called KNDI neurons that stands for kisspeptin, neurokinin B, and dynorphin neurons. Think of them as being super-sensitive regulators of body temperature.
Okay, K and DI neurons. So what happens to them when estrogen levels fall during menopause?
Well, the sources explain that these KNDI neurons, which are normally just keeping things stable, they actually change physically. They become hypertrophic, meaning they get larger, and they become hyperactive, really overstimulated.
Bigger and working overtime.
Precisely. And when they're hyperactive, they start releasing excessive amounts of certain signaling molecules, neurotransmitters, particularly neurokinin B, and another one called substance P.
And this overload messes with the thermostat.
Completely. It basically throws the brain's temperature calibration way off. Those hyperactive neurons are shouting, overheating, overheating, even when the body's core temperature is perfectly normal.
Ah, so the body reacts to a false alarm.
Exactly. The brain triggers the cool down mechanisms. Blood vessels in the skin dilate rapidly. That's the flushing, and you get intense sweating. That is the hot flash. It's a neurobiological misfire triggered by the hormonal change.
So hormone therapy works by adding estrogen back, which calms those neurons down.
Right. But Elinzanetant offers a different route to achieve that same calming effect without using hormones at all.
Which brings us to the drug itself, Elinzanetant. It's described as a selective dual neurokinin 1 and neurokinin 3 receptor antagonist. Okay, break that down for us. What's it blocking, and why are there 2 targets?
Okay, yeah, it sounds technical, but the key word is dual. It's designed to block two specific docking sites or receptors on neurons. First, the neurokinin-3 receptor. This is the main receptor for that neurokinin B molecule that gets dumped by those hyperactive KNDI neurons.
So blocking NK3 tackles the main signal causing the temperature dysregulation.
Largely, yes. But it also blocks the neurokinin-1 receptor. And that's the receptor for the other molecule we mentioned, substance P.
Substance P. Why block that one too?
Because by blocking both pathways, you're essentially calming that overactive thermostat circuit in two complementary ways. You're dampening down those overheating signals more completely, helping reset the body's temperature regulation more effectively.
Now, I remember another drug came out earlier, Elinzanetant, that also targeted neurokinin receptors, but that one was just NK3, right?
Correct. Elinzanetant is a selective neurokinin-3 receptor antagonist only. It's effective for VMS, certainly.
So why did the researchers developing Elinzanetant decide to go after NK1 as well? Was there a specific reason, a hypothesis for hitting both?
There absolutely was, and it's a really important distinction. While blocking NK3 seems to do the heavy lifting for reducing the frequency of hot flashes, the NK1 receptor and its signaling molecule, substance P, they have other roles in the brain.
Roles beyond just temperature control.
Yes. The scientific literature suggests that the substance P-NK1 pathway is involved in things like regulating our deep sleep cycles. There's even evidence linking it potentially to primary insomnia sleep problems that aren't just caused by being woken up by something else.
Interesting. So many women in menopause obviously suffer from night sweats that wake them up.
Right, the VMS shatters their sleep.
But you're saying some also have sleep problems that might be separate from the night sweats themselves, a kind of underlying sleep disturbance.
Exactly. And the hypothesis was that by also targeting the NK1 receptor, Elinzanetant might do more than just reduce the night sweats. It might actually help improve the underlying quality and architecture of sleep itself.
So potentially a double benefit for sleep, fewer awakenings from sweats, and maybe just better sleep overall.
That was the idea, a potential neurobiological advantage for restoring truly restful sleep. And as we'll see when we look at the trial results, this hypothesis seems to have been borne out quite strongly. That dual mechanism is really a defining feature here.
Okay, so that targeted mechanism, hitting both NK1 and NK3 to reset those hyperactive neurons, should lead to pretty clear results in clinical trials. Let's turn to those now. OASIS 1 and OASIS 2. These were the big phase 3 studies.
They were. The pivotal trials. Huge undertakings, really well designed. They were double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled, the gold standard for proving if a drug works and is safe.
And who was in these studies? What kind of participants were they looking for?
They enrolled postmenopausal women, generally between the ages of 40 and 65. And the key inclusion criterion was that they had to be experiencing moderate to severe VMS pretty frequently.
How frequent is frequent in this context?
The requirement was having 50 or more moderate or severe hot flashes over a 7-day period during the screening phase. So we're talking an average of at least 7 significant VMS events per day. These were women really struggling with symptoms.
Okay. And the setup was straightforward. Drug versus placebo.
Yep. Participants were randomly assigned to get either a 120 milligram dose of Alinsinetent, taken once a day, or an identical-looking placebo pill. The main thing they measured, the primary endpoint, was the change in how often they had moderate to severe VMS, and also the change in the severity of those flashes.
And they tracked this how?
Using electronic diaries. Patients recorded their symptoms daily, and the key time points for the main analysis were week 4 and week 12.
Right, but for someone suffering daily, the big question is always, how fast does this stuff work? Did they see effects early on?
This is one of the most striking findings from OASIS 1 and 2. The data showed statistically significant reductions in both the frequency and severity of VMS within the first week of taking Alinsinetant.
The first week.
The very first week. This is really crucial. Some other non-hormonal options, like certain antidepressants used off-label for VMS, can take weeks or even months to show their full effect. Seeing a significant impact almost immediately suggests the drug is hitting that core neurobiological mechanism very directly and effectively.
Can we put some numbers on that week 1 effect? How big was the difference compared to placebo right at the start?
Sure. In OASIS 1, the average reduction in daily VMS frequency at week 1 was 2.5 events more than the reduction seen with placebo. In OASIS 2, that difference was 1.7 events per day compared to placebo.
Okay, 1.7 or 2.5 fewer flashes per day than placebo after just 7 days.
And remember, that's the additional reduction on top of any placebo effect. Both of those differences were statistically significant, meaning unlikely to be due to chance. It shows a clear, measurable clinical benefit very, very quickly.
All right, so fast action. What about the main endpoints at week 12? Did the effect hold up and increase?
It absolutely did. By week 12, the results were even more pronounced and remarkably consistent across both trials. When they calculated the difference using least squares, means a statistical method to account for variability, Elinzanetant reduced the daily frequency of moderate to severe VMS by 3.2 events more than placebo did.
3.2 events per day difference at week 12 in both studies.
Exactly the same difference in both OASIS 1 and OASIS 2. That reproducibility is really powerful evidence.
Now, 3.2 fewer flashes a day might sound okay, but how does that translate in terms of overall relief for someone who started out having, say, 10 or 15 flashes a day?
That's a great point. The difference versus placebo number is important statistically, but the total reduction from baseline tells the patient's story better. By week 12, women taking Elinzanetant saw their VMS frequency drop by roughly 60% to 70% from where they started.
60 to 70% reduction. That sounds substantial.
It's a massive improvement. It represents a significant return towards normalcy and comfort for these individuals.
And how does this level of reduction stack up against what regulatory bodies like the FDA consider meaningful? Is there a benchmark?
Yes, there is. The sources mention that the FDA generally considers a reduction of at least 2 VMS events per day above the placebo response, which works out to 14 fewer events per week compared to placebo, to be clinically meaningful on a group level.
So did Elinzanetant hit that mark?
It didn't just hit it. It cleared it comfortably and early. It reached that clinically meaningful threshold by week 1 in OASIS 1 and by week 4 and certainly by week 12 in both trials.
That's impressive. How does that compare, generally speaking, to other options?
Well, achieving that level of reduction and doing it so quickly puts Elinzanetant's efficacy in a range comparable to, maybe even better than, what you see with low-dose hormone therapy. And it's certainly a more substantial and faster effect than typically seen with older non-hormonal options like OSRIs or SNRIs when used for VMS.
Okay, so the average reduction was strong, but averages can sometimes hide variability. Did most people respond well, or was it just a few people having dramatic results?
That's another key finding. The researchers looked at individual responses, too, as an exploratory analysis. And what they found was that by week 12, more than 70%, 7 out of 10 participants taking Elinzanetant had achieved at least a 50% reduction in their VMS frequency.
Wow, over 70% got at least a halfway reduction by 12 weeks.
And that percentage climbed even higher over time. By the end of the 26-week study period for OASIS 1 and 2, over 80% of participants on the drug reached that 50% reduction milestone.
That suggests a really consistent response across the board.
It does. It shows that the drug isn't just working dramatically for a select few. It's providing significant relief for the vast majority of women who took it in these trials. That's exactly what you want to see for a treatment intended for widespread use.
Okay, so clear efficacy on VMS frequency and severity. But these trials look beyond just counting hot flashes, didn't they? You mentioned the ripple effect.
Absolutely, because severe VMS doesn't just exist in isolation, it impacts everything. So the secondary goals of the trials were to measure the effect on sleep quality and overall menopause-related quality of life.
Let's talk about sleep first. That seems critical, especially with the night sweats and that potential dual NK1 mechanism we discussed. How did they measure sleep?
They used a well-validated tool called the PROMIS Sleep Disturbance Short Form. PROMIS stands for Patient-Reported Outcomes Measurement Information System. It's a standardized questionnaire that gives a score reflecting how much sleep disturbance someone is experiencing.
And what was the baseline sleep situation for women entering these studies?
On average, the participants in both OASIS 1 and 2 started out with scores indicating moderate sleep disturbance, a T-score above 60, which signifies a substantial chronic problem with poor sleep.
And what happened after 12 weeks of treatment?
The difference was quite striking. By week 12, the average score for the group taking Elinzanetant had dropped back down into the normal range for sleep disturbance.
Back to normal levels. And the placebo group?
The placebo group also saw some improvement, or maybe that strong placebo effect, but their average score only improved into the mild disturbance range. They didn't get back to normal.
That difference between ending up in the normal range versus just mild disturbance feels really significant clinically.
It is. It suggests the treatment wasn't just making sleep slightly less bad, it was helping restore sleep quality to a level comparable to people without these menopause-related issues.
And this is where that dual action blocking NK1 might be playing a key role.
It's strongly suggested. The improvement seems potentially greater than what you might expect just from reducing night sweats alone. It points towards that idea of Elinzanetant directly impacting the underlying sleep regulation mechanisms through the NK1 pathway, in addition to stopping the VMS interruptions. It's a really compelling benefit.
Okay, beyond sleep, what about overall quality of life? How is that measured?
For that, they used another standard tool, the Menopause-Specific Quality of Life Questionnaire, or MEN-QOL. This looks at symptoms across four main areas: the vasomotor domain, hot flashes, sweats, but also psychosocial, physical, and sexual domains.
Is there a benchmark for what counts as a meaningful improvement on the MEN-QOL?
Yes, the sources indicate that a decrease of about 0.9 points on the total score is generally considered clinically relevant.
And did the treatment meet that?
Interestingly, because of that strong placebo effect, we keep mentioning, likely driven by the intensive monitoring and hope for relief, both the Elinzanetant group and the placebo group, on average, met that 0.9-point improvement threshold by week 12.
So if both groups improved meaningfully, how do we know the drug itself was providing a specific benefit beyond just the placebo effect?
Because while both groups improved, the Elinzanetant group showed statistically significantly greater improvements than the placebo group on the total MQOL score.
And what drove that bigger improvement?
When they broke it down by domain, the difference was overwhelmingly powered by the huge improvement seen in the vasomotor domain score. Basically, by dramatically reducing the hot flashes and night sweats, the core problem, the drug targets the overall quality of life score, improved significantly more than what was seen with placebo alone. The drug tackled the main issue, and the broader quality of life benefits followed suit.
That makes sense. Fix the biggest problem and everything else tends to get better too.
Precisely. The targeted effect on VMS translated into a superior overall quality of life improvement.
Okay, so OASIS 1 and 2 established rapid efficacy, sustained over 26 weeks, with benefits for sleep and quality of life. The VMS can last much longer than 6 months, years even.
10 years or more for many women, as we said earlier.
Which means long-term safety and efficacy data is absolutely paramount. This brings us to OASIS 3, the 52-week trial.
Exactly. OASIS 3 was critical for getting that FDA approval. You need to show not only that the release lasts, but more importantly, that the drug is safe to take over an extended period, like a full year.
And OASIS 3 had a slightly different design, didn't it, in terms of who was included?
Yes, that's an important point. Unlike OASIS 1 and 2, which required participants to have very frequent, severe VMS, that 50+ per week threshold, OASIS 3 had a broader inclusion criteria. There wasn't a strict minimum number of VMS events needed to join the study.
What does that mean for the results? How does it make them more relevant, perhaps?
It means the OASIS 3 participant group likely represents a wider spectrum of women experiencing VMS in the real world, not just those at the most severe end, but also women with moderately bothersome symptoms who might seek treatment. Their baseline VMS frequency was indeed lower.
How much lower?
On average, participants in OASIS 3 started with around 6.7 to 6.8 moderate to severe VMS events per day, compared to the 13 to 16 per day we saw in the earlier trials.
Okay. So did the drug still work well in this slightly less severe but perhaps more typical group over the full year?
Yes. The efficacy held up beautifully over the entire 52 weeks. The study used descriptive analyses for the long-term data, and these showed consistent numerical advantages for Elinzanetant compared to placebo throughout the year.
Advantages in what, exactly?
In improving VMS frequency, VMS severity, those sleep disturbance scores we talked about, and the overall MEM-QOL quality of life score all show sustained benefit over 52 weeks.
Any specific numbers on how low the VMS frequency got by the end of the year?
Yeah, by week 50, the average VMS frequency in the group taking Elinzanetant had dropped way down to just 1.4 events per day.
From nearly 7 a day at the start down to less than 2. That's quite a change over a year.
It's a remarkable level of sustained control. Effectively, after a year, many of these women were experiencing minimal disruption from hot flashes.
All right, let's switch gears to the crucial safety findings from OASIS 3 over that full year. What were the common side effects reported? The treatment-emergent adverse events, or TEAs?
Okay, so overall, TEAs were reported a bit more often in the Elinzanetant group compared to placebo over the 52 weeks, roughly 70% versus 61%. The most frequent ones were generally headache and fatigue.
Were these typically severe?
No, the reports indicate most of these were mild or moderate in intensity. One thing that emerged more prominently in the longer OASIS 3 trial was somnolence, or feeling drowsy.
Did these side effects cause many people to stop taking the drug?
The discontinuation rate due to adverse events was relatively low overall, but it was higher in the Elinzanetant group than placebo. In OASIS 3, it was about 12.5% stopping due to side effects, compared to about 4.1% in the placebo group.
And what were the main reasons people stopped?
The top reasons cited for discontinuation were fatigue and headache, those most common Ts. It suggests that while often mild, for some individuals, these initial side effects might be bothersome enough to stop treatment, highlighting the need for managing expectations.
Okay. Now for the big one. Liver safety. You mentioned earlier this was a major concern with some previous drugs in this neurokinin antagonist class. How did Elinzanetant fare over 52 weeks?
This is arguably the most critical safety finding from the entire OASIS program and absolutely essential for FDA approval. Because of those past concerns with potential liver enzyme elevations, transaminitis, seen with other NK3 antagonists, the OASIS trials had extremely rigorous liver safety monitoring in place.
More than just standard checks.
Yes, they had an independent external liver safety monitoring board constantly reviewing the data. This wasn't just ticking a box, it was intense scrutiny.
And the verdict from that board?
The conclusion, looking across all three trials, OASIS 1, 2, and the full year of OASIS 3, was clear and incredibly reassuring. The monitoring board found no signal of a hepatotoxic effect.
No liver toxicity signal.
Correct. And crucially, there were no confirmed cases of drug-induced liver injury, or DII. This clean bill of health regarding the liver is what really sets Elinzanetant apart and provides confidence for long-term use. It suggests something about its specific structure, or perhaps the dual NK1-NK3 action might mitigate those liver risks seen previously.
That is a massive hurdle cleared. What about other long-term safety aspects, particularly gynecological health? Estrogen affects the uterine lining, the endometrium. Did this non-hormonal drug cause any issues there?
That was another area assessed very carefully over the 52 weeks, and the findings were excellent. There were absolutely no cases of endometrial hyperplasia, that's abnormal thickening of the lining, nor were there any cases of malignant endometrial neoplasms or cancer.
And the thickness itself?
Endometrial thickness remains stable throughout the year. This confirms that Elinzanetant doesn't have estrogen-like effects on the uterus, which is really important, especially for women who might have contraindications to estrogen, like breast cancer survivors.
Okay, good news on the endometrium. What about bones? We know bone density decreases after menopause due to lower estrogen. Did Elinzanetant affect bone mineral density or BMD?
They tracked BMD changes closely as well. The results were also reassuring. The average percentage changes in bone density seen over the year were considered clinically non-meaningful.
How small are we talking?
Very small losses, typically in the range of 1 to 2% over the year. This is basically within the range you'd expect to see just due to age-related bone loss in this postmenopausal population anyway.
So it doesn't seem to worsen bone loss.
Exactly. The data indicates Elinzanetant is essentially neutral regarding bone health. It doesn't seem to cause harm, but it also doesn't provide the bone protective effects that estrogen therapy does. For women who can't or won't take hormones, though, this neutral profile is definitely favorable. No added risk.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've got a novel drug targeting specific brain neurons. We have OASIS 1 and 2 showing rapid, significant VMS reduction within a week, sustained over 26 weeks, plus benefits for sleep and quality of life.
Right.
Then we have OASIS 3 confirming that efficacy holds up over a full year, even in a broader population. And critically, that 52-week data shows a strong safety profile, especially the lack of liver toxicity signals and no adverse effects on endometrial health or bone density beyond normal aging.
That's the package. That comprehensive reproducible data across 3 large trials is what underpinned the FDA's decision.
And that FDA approval granted in October 2025, it really feels like more than just another drug approval, doesn't it? It feels like a significant milestone.
I think it truly is. For decades, the options for managing severe VMS were basically hormones or less effective, often off-label alternatives like antidepressants. This approval finally offers a purpose-built, highly effective, non-hormonal primary option.
You mentioned Dr. Joanne Pinkerton, one of the trial leads. Her quote really hits home the unmet need, doesn't it?
It does. She pointed out, more than a third of women experience disruptive menopausal symptoms that can persist for more than a decade. Many symptomatic menopausal women continue to suffer without treatment and support. This approval directly addresses that suffering.
So the biggest immediate impact is for women who had no good options before, those with contraindications to hormones.
Absolutely. Think about women who've had breast cancer, where estrogen therapy is a definite no-go, or women with a history of clots. For them, this isn't just an option. It could be the only highly effective option. But it's also crucial for the many women who simply prefer a non-hormonal approach for personal reasons.
It provides a real choice based on strong evidence.
A validated, targeted choice, not just a compromise or a stopgap.
And the research isn't stopping here, is it? The sources mention follow-up studies.
That's right. The science is pushing forward. There's the OASIS-4 trial, for instance, which is specifically looking at Elinzanetant for treating VMS caused by endocrine therapies, drugs often used in women with or at high risk of breast cancer. That's targeting a very specific vulnerable group.
And didn't you mention something about sleep specifically?
Yes, the Nirvana trial. It's a phase 2 study exploring how well Elinzanetant works for women who have significant sleep disturbances linked to menopause, even if their hot flashes aren't necessarily in the severe category. It's really leaning into that potential dual mechanism benefit for sleep.
It shows they're really trying to understand the full scope of where this drug might help. Now, even with such positive results, responsible science always acknowledges limitations. What did the study reports flag?
A few key things. Firstly, the reliance on patient-reported outcomes, the diaries, the questionnaires. While essential for subjective symptoms like VMS or sleep quality, these measures are inherently prone to a significant placebo effect, as we saw.
Right, the act of monitoring symptoms can sometimes change perception.
Exactly. Another point is generalizability. The trials focused mainly on postmenopausal women. So while promising, we have less data right now on how well it works or how safe it is for women in the perimenopausal transition when hormone levels can be fluctuating wildly.
That's a different physiological state?
It is. And also demographics. The study teams made efforts to enroll a diverse population, trying to get proportional representation for Black African American and Hispanic Latino women based on U.S. Census data. However, the overall study group was still predominantly white.
So while the results seem broadly applicable, more real-world data across diverse groups will be important.
Yes, post-marketing studies and ongoing research will be key to confirming efficacy and safety across all populations.
But weighing those limitations against the consistency across 3 large trials, the rapid and sustained efficacy, and particularly that reassuring long-term safety profile.
Especially the liver safety.
It seems clear why the FDA and the scientific community felt confident. The data package was robust.
Extremely robust and reproducible. It really signals a paradigm shift.
So, wrapping up our deep dive today, the core message seems clear. Alinsinetent offers a new way forward. It's rapid, it's sustained, it's non-hormonal relief for VMS.
And it significantly improves those key related issues, sleep and overall quality of life, all backed by reassuring year-long safety data, especially calming those historical worries about liver and endometrial health.
It really feels like a win based on understanding the underlying neurobiology, doesn't it? Moving beyond just thinking hormones to targeting specific brain pathways.
Absolutely. It redefines VMS not just as hormonal fallout, but as a specific type of neuronal dysregulation in the hypothalamus that we can now directly address. It empowers women with real evidence-based choices.
Which leads to a final thought, perhaps looking ahead. If we now understand VMS is rooted in this KNDI neuron hyperactivity, and we know blocking neurokinin receptors, particularly NK1, also impacts things like sleep, what might this targeted neurobiological approach mean for other challenging symptoms of menopause?
That's the exciting frontier, isn't it? Many women experience other centrally mediated symptoms alongside VMS. Think about mood changes, increased anxiety, maybe even changes in pain perception that seem linked to the menopausal transition.
Symptoms that haven't always been well addressed.
Exactly. If these symptoms also involve dysregulation within specific neuronal circuits, perhaps even overlapping with the KNDA system or related pathways, could similar targeted neurokinin modulation or other non-hormonal neurobiological approaches offer new treatment strategies?
So moving beyond just replacing hormones or using broad antidepressants towards more precise neuromodulators tailored to the full spectrum of menopausal brain changes.
That's the potential implication. It opens the door to thinking about menopause management in a much more nuanced, brain-focused way. Elinzanetant might be the first major step in that neuroendocrine revolution for midlife women's health.
A really fascinating prospect, and certainly a welcome development, offering hope and concrete options for so many. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive today. We hope this exploration of the OASIS trials has been informative. Use the knowledge, share the understanding, and as always, stay curious.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.